Test 1, 2, audio, test 3, 2, 1. Hello, hello, hello! Once again, it is I, Mr. Cinema Junkie, and today, on this auspicious day, Friday the 13th, it got me to thinking about the heyday of the horror movies, the absolute zenith of the slasher films, the 80s. I am, I guess, for all intents and purposes, a child of the 80s. I grew up in the 80s. Um, it was a great time. It was the time of it was a time of polo shirts and Kangos and big ass glasses and breakdancing and ninjas. But more importantly, it was the time of the horror movie. A great growth of horror movies. Stuff that we all still enjoy to this day. Some have been remade. Some successfully, some not so successfully. But today, what I want to do is just take a little walk down memory lane with all of you who appreciate the great slasher films of the 80s and show you some trailers from those times. And I brought some of my personal favorites. I'm talking about some of my personal favorites that I grew up on. And there were only two rules for making this video. Number one, I had to have seen it when it was new, back in the 80s. Not something that I dug up back, a couple years ago and said, "Oh, hey, I wish I would have seen this when I was younger." No, I had to have seen it when it was fresh and new and young, like me. Rule number two, it cannot have spawned a sequel. That was a very important rule for me, and the reason I say that is because if I would have gone ahead and said greatest horror movies of the 80s, I would have had Friday the 13th 1, 2, 3, and 4 right off the bat. And that's kind of cheating in my book. So these are all one-shot films of glory and horror and blood and guts, exploitative and very cruel and mean and nasty. All the stuff that we love about horror movies. So let's get started, shall we, with my first choice. Since Friday the 13th didn't make the list, here's a little trivia I've brought up a couple times. While they were shooting Friday the 13th, right across from the lake, there was another movie being shot. And it's this one, right here.
Somewhere in the woods of Deep Barren, a woman and her sons live in isolation. When they come out, it's for one reason only.
Now let's see what you brought, Mother.
Some say she spoiled her boys. Some say she drove them mad. No one who found out has lived to tell.
Darlings, you have made your mother very proud.
Charles Kaufman's Mother's Day.
Yep, Mother's Day. Mother's Day was one of those really cheaply made but very effective horror movies, and it grabbed your attention right from the get, because I remember the commercial would say things like, "We can't show you what's happening here, and we can't show you this scene here." And of course, it made me go, "But I want to see it." So, yeah, Mother's Day was one that kind of gripped me. And to this day, I still enjoy it. I know it's been remade, totally different format in my book. Not the cool, crazy Mother's Day that it was back then. It's a little more subtle. Next up, we've learned over the years that love is a bitch, and it's not a bigger bitch than in this movie right here.
In this town on Valentine's Day, everybody loses their heart.
It looks like Harry Warden's back in town.
In the town of Valentine Bluffs, there are many ways to die. Take your pick.
My Bloody Valentine.
Rated R.
My Bloody Valentine pretty much captured everything that people never thought could be when it comes to Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day is about Cupid and chocolates and cards and promise rings, and not some maniac with a pickaxe going out trying to jack up your holiday. Always loved this movie. Loved the ending. Yes, it got a remake in 3D, no less. I guess it was one of those unnecessary remakes in my book, because it had moments that reminded me of the original, but still kind of lacked that classy feel to it, if I may use the word so loosely, classy. And who could forget this little number right here?
Warning. What you will see in the movie Pieces cannot be revealed, cannot be described, cannot even be imagined. And you don't have to go to Texas for a chainsaw massacre. Pieces. It's exactly what you think it is. Pieces. Absolutely no one under 17 will be admitted.
Yes, sir. You don't have to go to Texas for a chainsaw massacre, and they proved it quite well here. There was just something about this movie that was a little above and beyond most of the other movies. Yes, it had an Italian feel to it, Italian director, made in America, of course. But from the opening to the ending, there was just something totally different, totally unique about Pieces, and it will forever have a special place in my heart. Speaking of special places in my heart, another thing that people seem to do a lot of back in the 80s was have a lot of movies that had to do with camping, Friday the 13th notwithstanding. There's something about being taken out of your element, like the city, and being placed in the woods at the mercy of whatever's out there. And this movie proved that beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Many strange things happen around here. He was a farmer, wife and 2 children, who used to live in that old house behind those trees. For no apparent reason, went stark, raving mad. He walked into his bedroom. The bodies of his wife and children have never been found. And if he hears you call his name, he'll come for you.
Come and get us, madman!
Oh, yes, Mars. Madman Mars. Don't say his name, because if he hears you, he'll come after you. This was a fun movie. I remember enjoying this immensely. Sitting there in that dark theater, and this was back when theaters were really theaters, with one big, gigantic screen, not 27 little tiny screens. I think that's why everybody thinks the movies these days are laughable, because they're not as scary. You're not as immersed into the picture. You don't need 3D, people. You need bigger screens. Somewhere along the line, somebody decided it would be a good idea to make a movie that wasn't as bloody, with no cursing, no nudity, and still try to play it off, pass it as good old-fashioned horror. And this is what this is.
Dark Knight. You've never been this close to true terror.
Surprisingly, they pulled it off. One Dark Knight was actually a very enjoyable movie. I know people who are old school like myself figure that horror and boobs go hand in hand. And it's not a bad formula, really. This one had no boobs, no blood either. Just a lot of yuck in it. But it still had a very cool element, and Adam West was in it, so you got to give him credit. The first time I saw a movie that had anything to do with snuff films, it was this movie here. Loosely, but there was a snuff film element in it. Take it away.
This is the road to Potter's Bluff. Maybe you've been there. Clean, picturesque, full of old-fashioned friendliness. The kind of town everyone likes to visit. This is the road to Potter's Bluff. There is no road out.
Welcome to Potter's Bluff.
From the creators of Alien, terror brought down to Earth, dead and buried.
Is there any way whatsoever to reanimate people after they have died? To get them to walk around?
That guy, the one you came to see me about last week, the one that died after the car wreck.
Yeah.
I just saw him. Man, he's dead. The same guy.
Welcome to Potter's Bluff.
When you die, you expect to remain dead and buried.
You had a very close call. Just lie still. I'm gonna give you something. It's gonna make you feel even better.
When you die in Potter's Bluff, expect the unexpected. From the creators of Alien, dead and buried. It will take your breath away. All of it. Dead and buried.
Yeah, in the beginning of the movie, they filmed this guy being burned to death. That's a snuff film. But I didn't know what a snuff film was back then. I had no idea. I just thought it was this town of crazy people. And then when I found out what the truth of the movie was, I was like, holy shit. I still enjoy this movie, and I hope to get it on Blu-ray someday with a really nice transfer. Give it the transfer it deserves. Good stuff. Now, we have had, up until the 80s, we have had a few maniacs on the farm kind of things, and people using other people as food. But I don't think anyone really gave it the evil joy that this movie gave it.
You may never again spend a night away from home. After you spend a night with Ida and Vincent.
Ida will show you the way.
You want us to register?
No, that won't be necessary.
Your most terrifying nightmare could never prepare you for what happens to the guest.
Vincent, you think in the years to come, people will appreciate us for what we're doing here?
I have a surprise for you.
Oh, goody, I love surprises.
One after another they come. One after another they check in. And pray for the day they can check out.
All we have to do is give to be happy.
You'll never forget Ida.
What are you doing in here,
world, and you'll never forget Vincent. And hard as you try, you'll never forget their secret garden. If you have the nerve, come for a night and stay for a nightmare. Motel Hell. No one will be admitted after the guests check in.
Oh yeah, it takes all sorts of critters to make Farmer Vincent fritters. There was just something about this movie that I could not let go. It was so much fun in a wicked sort of way that to this day I enjoy throwing it in the old DVD player and checking it out every once in a while. Silly, campy, over the top, sure. A lot of the movies back then were, but that's what made them fun. Almost kid friendly.